Welcome back to the channel. This will be the best wildcard team for Gameweek 32 in FPL. This will be a double Gameweek for Crystal Palace and Newcastle, and we have yet another double Gameweek on the horizon. You can't use two chips at the same time, so if you activate the wildcard this week, you could set up the bench boost for Gameweek 33, which I'll do in this video because this squad is optimized for that particular chip. And if you also have the free hit, then this wildcard squad will really help you to navigate the blank as well. But otherwise, you have to make some compromises, and your Gameweek 32 and possibly 33 prospects will be weaker if you have no free hit and have to do a balancing act to kind of navigate all of these blanks and doubles in the best possible way. Like this video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy my content. Our aim is to get this to a 200 likes and to keep on pushing towards new goals like 33,000 subscribers. Check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, FPL League and Spotify can also be found in the description. Keep your eyes peeled for more UCL fantasy and FPL videos and live streams over the next couple of weeks. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. My overall squad value is 103.8 million, and a lot depends on when you bought certain players and the value you have tied up in them, but ultimately this squad will be accessible for many people watching, and I will discuss some possible downgrades just in case you are struggling for funds. And I have to be honest, a lot of you watching might have even more money at your disposal in FPL terms to really bolster every single position. I will start off with the two goalkeepers, and there is a key change between the sticks because this player has a great fixture in Gameweek 32 and also a double in Gameweek 33. I'm not a massive fan of covering Aston Villa defensively, but Emi Martinez is the safest way to do so. With that Southampton away fixture in 32 and then doubling against Newcastle and Man City, I think you can really get a solid bench boost out of the next week and also a starting goalkeeper right in front of you. So I think Emi Martinez is definitely worth a kind of short-term punt, but if we are looking towards the end of the season, I'm not as convinced about him, and you have to be a bit careful about spending too much money in this position because that might lead to some compromises in the outfield areas where you're going to score more points generally speaking, and with this position the ceiling is very low and you're ultimately kind of relying on clean sheets more than anything else. But Martinez is one of the best goalkeepers in world football, particularly at saving penalties, and Aston Villa have won 7 consecutive games at the time of this recording, and we'll see how they do against Paris Saint-Germain in this midweek. But in FPL terms, the likes of Luca Dean and Konsa, they are benchable, and we saw Konsa actually rested in Gameweek 31 against Nottingham Forest in that 2-1 victory, which was a bit surprising, you could say. And with Luca Dean and Maatsen, you're going to see rotation from now until the end of the campaign. So I'd completely avoid that. And if you really want that Aston Villa defensive coverage, go for Emi Martinez between the sticks. I'd also suggest David Raya, despite the fact he has blanked in the last couple of matches, and Arsenal have been a bit shaky defensively. But against Everton, I do think they limited the Toffees to limited chances, and the penalty was very soft to say the least. But Raya, I don't know what's happened to him in terms of saving penalties. He did very well last season against Porto in the round of 16, but in other penalty shootouts, he has been a bit suspect this season, so I'm not sure what's happened there. But ultimately, he is a very solid goalkeeper. He doubles in Gameweek 33, and Arsenal have the best fixtures there against Ipswich Town and Crystal Palace. And you also have the blank in 34 to contend with, and that's what could be a major issue. So this is really geared towards the Gameweek 33 bench boost. But if you have no free hit, you have to make a bit of a compromise here and perhaps go for the likes of Areola or Jose Sarr. And if that was the case, I would drop Emi Martinez between these two. Crystal Palace are the only team to have consecutive doubles from now until the end of the season, so they have 2 fixtures in Gameweek 32, and the same happens in 33, albeit they are of quite poor quality, especially from a defensive perspective, but I think Munoz is worth the extra millions over Dean Henderson in goal or the other Crystal Palace defenders, and of course Mark Gay is suspended for the first match of Gameweek 32 after picking up a second yellow card, but he has the goals and assist threat, and we saw that in action against Brighton in that 2-1 victory there for Crystal Palace. So I think Munoz is certainly worth the investment, and he's probably my favourite Crystal Palace asset overall, alongside Jean-Philippe Mateta. You do have those midfielders who I'll talk about very soon, but I think Munoz is just a jack of all trades and a very exciting defender to own in FPL. Next up is Livramento, who doesn't really share that same kind of quality going forwards, but he's a young defender with a lot of potential, and I think he could do fairly well in terms of bonus points and clean sheets. And there are 2 home games here for Newcastle, but of course they will feature in Gameweek 34 against Ipswich Town, and they won't double in Gameweek 33, and all of that was dependent on the FA Cup results, which I talked about in my recent live streams and videos. But these two are kind of a lock with this Gameweek 32 double right in front of us, and they are my favourite options. But the likes of Trippier is another decent shout, and he might be worth the extra million if you have the funds available because of bonus points and attacking threat. But I think Trippier is too big of an injury risk over the last year, and I personally think the likes of Dan Burn and Livramento offer even better value. But I would also go for a cheap option to cover Arsenal in Jakub Kiwior, who's going to replace Gabriel until the end of the campaign, as the Brazilian will miss the rest of the season due to a hamstring problem. And Kiwior was awarded player of the match against Everton in that 1-1 draw, and usually comes in and does a job for Arsenal. I mean, if we cast our minds back to last season, he played as a left back and did very well in the run-in, as Arsenal got 16 wins, 1 draw and 1 loss, but they haven't been able to replicate that this season. They have struggled for consistency. The amount of injuries as well has played a big part, red cards, and also the tactics, I think, from Mikel Arteta. There's definitely a lot of different factors that have resulted in a disappointing season for the Gunners. You might want to go for William Saliba instead, or Jurriën Timber, but I think Kiwior would offer the best value in this Arsenal defence, and it's really those clean sheets you're kind of hoping for, and none of them have that attacking potential that the likes of Daniel Munoz will offer you in other teams. But let's now complete this defensive line with one of my favourite purchases on the Gameweek 30 wildcard, and that's Josko Gvardiol, who got a clean sheet against Leicester and also against Man United in a very dull 0-0 affair, and Gvardiol got maximum bonus points to deliver 9 overall, but he has been very good from an FPL perspective, and he also has the goals and assist potential, but he hasn't been playing as a left back in recent matches, and instead we've seen Nico O'Reilly in that position. But that can also be a positive for Josko Gvardiol, because you will have potentially 2 midfielders in FPL terms in Matheus Nunes and Nico O'Reilly playing in the defence. So if C do keep a clean sheet and it's a low scoring game, as we saw in Gameweek 31, then Gvardiol has a great chance of getting bonus points, and that could be a common theme from now until Gameweek 38. And last but not least, I'm going to go for a very surprising pick in here, to say the least, and I want to see what you think down the comment section below. A lot does depend on your strategies and also your remaining chips, but I would highly recommend, if you are looking at the Gameweek 33 bench boost, to go for Konate and cover Liverpool defensively as they face Leicester away, and that would make for a very strong bench boost, which you'll see with a midfield and forward line. This will complete the set, and it will put you in a great position to potentially get over 100 points next week. If you have the funds, you may want to go for Eze over Ismaila Sarr, who has disappointed since I got him on the Gameweek 30 wildcard, and that's something that happened earlier this season when I almost went for Eze and chose Sarr in the end, and it was Eze who got the big return, while Sarr was very underwhelming until I eventually sold him earlier this season. But I'm also going to leave a lot of money in the bank for moves in Gameweek 33, so you can have the best of both worlds for double Gameweek 32, and then when you use the bench boost in the following week. But let me know your thoughts as always and your suggestions. How are you going to navigate all these doubles and blanks? But I'm also going to go for Jacob Murphy, and a bit of a similar theme here. You might want to go for Anthony Gordon instead, but either way, his minutes could be managed as he's coming off the back of an injury in Gameweek 32. But I think Gordon will start both matches unless Eddie Howe gives a negative update over the next couple of days, and Jacob Murphy is almost a shoo-in to start both matches, and he could be a great 1-week punt. Afterwards, he is disposable, but at that price tag, he isn't a priority sell unless you're looking to bench boost in Gameweek 33. So once again, the chip strategy is very important here. But next up is going to be Bukayo Saka. Despite his benching in Gameweek 31, we also saw the same happen to Cole Palmer. So 2 of the best assets in this midfield have been fairly underwhelming in the last couple of months. Of course, with Saka, it was due to injury, and he still got that 8-pointer against Fulham upon his return. And at the Emirates, I could see him scoring many goals. And for Gameweek 33, he might even be the standout captaincy option, rivaling the likes of Mateta and Marmoush. But let's now go to the other positions here, and I'm not going to recommend De Bruyne, despite the fact this will be the last couple of games he has for Manchester City. Phil Foden is in and out of that team, and he's really struggled for consistency this season. If you have the funds as well, you might want to go for Palmer and Saka simultaneously, whilst also having the likes of Mohamed Salah in your setup. But in this case, I'm going to go for a cheap option who faces Southampton away this week, and then he doubles in Gameweek 33, and that's Morgan Rogers. I know you might be more appealed by Rashford and Marco Asensio, but their minutes are far more of a risk compared to Morgan Rogers, who seems to always start for Aston Villa, and he scored against Nottingham Forest in Gameweek 31 and got 2 assists against Brighton in the previous game week. So he is showing some real consistency, and Aston Villa are in fine form right now. So I think Rodgers could be a great pick, and hopefully this isn't the game where he's rested, and that is the one where you think he has the high ceiling, facing the worst team in the league who just sacked their manager, and they were relegated in Gameweek 31 after their 3-1 loss against Tottenham Hotspur. And last but not least is Mohamed Salah, who has blanked in consecutive game weeks and he's no longer essential. And I've said this for months now, that he was in tremendous form, but eventually he will drop off, and it's quite natural for that to happen. And we have seen this kind of pattern over the last couple of seasons, but I still think he's got something to say over the last couple of matches to help Liverpool secure the Premier League title. Despite their 3-2 loss against Fulham, where they were very shaky defensively, they still created chances, and I think it was mainly down to individual errors rather than anything else. And Mohamed Salah had a poor game. He missed another big chance, just like he did against Everton in that 1-0 victory back in Gameweek 30. But all things considered, with Erling Haaland out of the equation, I don't think there are many excuses to go about Mohamed Salah right now. You might actually consider going for Palmer instead, but even he's not showing great form with no goals in the last 12 matches, and hopefully he breaks that goal drought very soon. But you do have plenty of options in this midfield, like Anthony Gordon, Eze, Cole Palmer, and there are others there like Rashford and Asensio who you might want to go for as a differential, but I think these 5 midfielders will do the job. Jean-Philippe Mateta scored a stunning strike to open the scoring against Brighton, and he has been tremendous in this calendar year. It's just a shame he had that injury in the FA Cup, which kind of halted his momentum a little bit, but he is back. He's going to get a lot of minutes. I know he has been subbed off early in the last 2 matches, but I'd still expect him to start most games in this Premier League campaign. The only concern I would have is for double Gameweek 33, when Crystal Palace face Arsenal. They could actually rotate a little bit more than you'd expect, because that's a couple of days before the FA Cup semi-finals, which take place in blank Gameweek 34. So keep your eyes peeled for that situation. But apart from that particular match, I think Mateta will start virtually every single game in this competition. And Nketiah is knocking on the door. He's doing quite well off the bench, and also when Mateta isn't starting the game. But I just think there are levels to it, and the Frenchman is a more consistent goal scorer and a far better finisher for Crystal Palace. I would also recommend Alexander Isak, who is still yellow flagged as things stand, and this video is recorded before Newcastle versus Leicester, so the points and stuff you see on the left hand side will be slightly out of date, but you can see the updated versions in my team selection video, the deadline stream, and all my other FPL content which is coming your way. But Alexander Isak is just a fantastic choice, and he has some good fixtures to boot. I think he's the best captain for double Gameweek 32, and even against Aston Villa away in 33, I wouldn't mind starting him, to be quite honest with you, or having him part of your bench boost squad. And for blank Gameweek 34, he is once more one of the best captaincy options facing Ipswich Town at home. And last but not least is Marmoush, who had 3 shots on target against Man United, and one of them was a ferocious volley, and he also performed very well against Leicester. He scored, got bonus points, and I could see that being a common theme from now until the end of the Premier League season. And with Erling Haaland out of the equation for the next 5 to 7 weeks, that has only boosted Marmoush's appeal as an FPL asset, and the rotation won't be as big of a concern with him as it once was. The starting 11 for double Gameweek 32 would include Emi Martinez in goal, facing Southampton away, with David Raya on the bench, facing Brentford at home, a back three of Munoz, Gavardio and Livramento. 2 of them double this week, and Gavardio faces Crystal Palace at home, so they all have excellent fixtures, or at least in the case of Munoz, he's got the quantity of fixtures and he can score or assist in any given game. You've also got Murphy, Sarr, Saka, Salah, with Marmoush, Mateta and Isak. That is a formidable front line, and you can also go for one of Eze or Anthony Gordon in that midfield. But I've got around 2.4 million in the bank to make some transfers in Gameweek 33 to bolster that bench boost with this wildcard squad. On the bench, we have David Raya, Rodgers, Konate and Kivior, and you could make a case for starting Rodgers over Bukayo Saka this week, but then again with the minutes, even with Rodgers himself, who has been almost indestructible, there is the possibility he is benched and rested here and then saved for the Champions League, the FA Cup and the rest of this Premier League campaign. So there is always going to be a concern with these Aston Villa attackers, even Rodgers this week, but in the grand scheme of things, he is far more nailed on than Watkins, Asensio, and Rashford, and any Aston Villa midfielder or forward basically. So he is the one I'd invest in, and I'm not too keen on going for their defenders in general. Emi Martinez is already enough coverage for that Aston Villa defence. And for double game week 33, it is a great looking bench boost. The expected points is 107.8. We've got David Raya away to Ipswich Town and at home to Crystal Palace. Kiwior and Saka completes that Arsenal triple up. You've got Munoz, Sarr and Mateta with a double game week of Bournemouth at home and Arsenal away, with Gvardiol and Marmoush facing Everton away and Aston Villa at home. You've got Morgan Rogers facing Newcastle at home and Man City away, and other single game week players like Salah away to Leicester, Isak away to Aston Villa, Jarrod Bowen you can bring in at home to Southampton. The same goes for Wan-Bissaka with the same fixture. That looks very appealing. And Konate facing Leicester away. Emi Martinez as your backup goalkeeper. It's not a great set of fixtures, to be honest, from a defensive perspective, but it is a double game week, and that should score a lot of points unless injuries, suspensions, and other factors happen, and hopefully that doesn't over the next couple of days and also throughout the duration of double game week 33. So let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below about this wildcard squad and how it looks like for the bench boost. If you don't have the free hit, you need to make some compromises and add some more Wolves players, for example, like Ait Nouri in that defensive line, or Matheus Cunha, who is now back from suspension. You can go for him in that front line, and that could work very well for you. And perhaps you want to go for Nottingham Forest defenders and players from the get-go. Elanga is currently yellow flagged. The same goes for Chris Wood, and I'll provide updates on this channel about their fitness, and maybe Milenkovic or Sells in goal would be other great options for blank game week 34, and even for the other gimmicks where they don't double, they are still very solid options overall. But if you have the free hit, I would highly suggest you do something like this and optimize the bench boost for double game week 33. That concludes the best wildcard team for double game week 32. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and a lot of wildcards will look similar, but there could be a few differences depending on your remaining chips, like the bench boost, the free hit, and perhaps the assistant manager. This is all covered in my chip strategy guide and throughout all of my FPL content, not just the videos, but also deadline and reaction streams, which have taken place over the last couple of months. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it insightful, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and also hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single upload or live stream for both UCL Fantasy and FPL. Let's try to get this to over 200 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards new goals like 33,000 subscribers. Follow me on X, Instagram and Blue Sky, Dylan RCM, and check all the links in the description below for my Patreon and the championships, for early access to my videos, amongst many other perks. The Discord server, FPL League and Spotify can also be found in the description. I'll see you on Tuesday for a UCL Fantasy deadline stream, and also for more content and live streams throughout the entire season.